Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, we're talking with Caleb Auman of Auman Landscape. So Caleb and his wife, Brittany, run Auman Landscape, and they are from Ohio in the United States. So it's our second international guest we've had on the podcast. And I'm hoping to get a few more on from overseas just to hear the different way they do things. And also, there's a few podcast hosts like Caleb is, because he's the host of the Kid Contractor Podcast. So there's a few hosts who I'm looking to get on so that you get a snippet of what they are like as people, because there's some podcasts I listen to which I love, and I think it's a lot of value for people to learn from them as well. Like Caleb especially got a lot of horticultural knowledge, and also listening to his episodes, nearly every couple of episodes is something you can take away as a new learning or something that sort of jogs your memory, something you should be doing business-wise. So it's great to listen to. Also a bit of fun along the way. It doesn't take itself too seriously, as you'll see in this episode. So Caleb runs a landscape business. He's also got the podcast, also does a training course called the Hardscape Academy. And he and his wife, Brittany, as well as a couple of other people over there, run a conference called Together in the Trades, which is something we talk about towards the end of this episode. And I think it's just an awesome thing that they do. There's no profit they're making out of it. They're just doing it out of the goodness of their heart to help out people in the industry. So it's to be commended. So I've got no doubt plenty of people will enjoy this episode as well as learn something from it. And if you did learn something and you like the cut of his jib, you can follow along at Auman Landscape or the Kid Contractor Podcast. He pumps out 3 episodes a week. So plenty of audio to listen to there where you could learn a thing or two. So hopefully you enjoy this episode with Caleb Auman. Caleb, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. So the first question I've got for you is how it all started for you and how you started in the industry.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. I'm flattered to be on. How did we get started in the industry? I was in my neighbor, long story, but the short version of it, my neighbor started a lawn mowing business, a grass cutting service. And I went to work for them. I wasn't able to drive at the time. I was like 15 years old. I was pretty young, but I went and worked with them after school because he was a school teacher. And so we would go mow grass after school with him once he was done teaching school. And then in the summertime, teachers here in the States have the summer off, probably maybe the same in Australia. I don't know. But we go mow grass every day after school. And pretty quickly, I realized I wanted to start my own company. And a lot I learned about working for somebody, there's a lot I learned about working while I was working for someone else. And it taught me like how I wanted people, and they taught me, they treated me fair, don't get me wrong, but I learned a lot about how I want my own employees to feel when, they're working for me. And so starting my business, I learned a lot working for them. And then I wanted to get more into landscape construction, landscape design, environmental construction, stuff like that. And went to college in a 2-year school for landscape design at Columbus State, just small 2-year community college. And then just from there, just kept growing and learning and building the company. And that was 22 years ago. And through that, I crashed my first company about 10 years in. The first 5 years were pretty good. The last 5 years, I tried to grow too much and be too much of a big time contractor and ended up crashing my first company. Crashed that company. I was dating a girl at the time, and she helped me start my next company, owns it, and became my wife just a year after we started that new company together, which I wouldn't always recommend somebody do that with a girlfriend, but we started that, and here we are now here in 2022 with a company. So long answer to your short question, which I'm going to do a lot of that. That's how I go. I get long-winded. So cut me off anytime, Joel.
Will do. So what was the reason for crashing your first one in terms of, like you said, you were trying to grow too big? So what was the things you were, in hindsight, did wrong? At that point, I was trying to hire too many people. I was trying to get too big for my britches, as a saying here maybe in the States, maybe we got it from UFO. I don't even know, whatever. Yep, I'm gonna dance this line of like colloquialisms of like the States and try to make it like applicable. So bear with me. I'm gonna stumble through this here, man. And your audience is gonna figure out I'm a pretty big goofball when it comes to this stuff and trying to do this. But the big thing is I was just trying to grow too fast. And so I was bringing on employees before I was really ready for employees. And we were trying to do all of the tax withholding, because in the States, the employer withholds tax, of course, and pays contributing tax and all this kind of stuff on your employees' wages and all that. And I was a single
owner operator working in the field and trying to manage 3 and 4 guys on our payroll and doing all the tax stuff. And long story short, started getting behind on all my taxes and on my sales taxes, which is the tax we pay on the revenue or the sales of the tax, not let alone our profit and all that stuff. And I just started getting this huge tax mess over 4 or 5 years. And it finally really came to a head where I was just like, I couldn't run away from my problems anymore. And I had to face them head on. And, but it was just, long story short, not paying attention to my numbers. And if we were making money every year, and if we were, how much we were making, or if it was like worthwhile and all that. But the thing was about it, I loved the industry so much. And I loved running the business so much, but I was just a bad business person, bad businessman. And fortunately, all those lessons taught me how to run a better business the second go around. And I went bankrupt in 2009, and it wasn't in a whole lot of debt, but it was part of a whole legal tax strategy to begin to straighten things out. And I still had, I had $50,000 in state taxes I was behind on, and almost $100,000 in federal. It was craziness, man. And we had to navigate and negotiate through that best we could. And now 12 years later, now we're on the backside of it. But that was a scary period. It taught me a lot about running a business the right way and paying attention to your numbers.
So when you started the phase 2 of the business, did you start slower and just start with 1 or 2 employees, or how did you get back into it?
It was funny because we had this business up and running, right, with 2 or 3 guys, and we closed that business legally and properly and started a new business legally and properly that my girlfriend at the time was owned and ran, and it was all above board, all legal to do this way and all that. But we still had this book of business of 10 years. And so we still had all this work and all these requests for work, but a brand new company. And so navigating through that and trying to figure out, like, the first 5 years were still really tough because we still didn't fully have it figured out financially. And we started getting, here in the States, there's a guy named Dave Ramsey, and he's a really big financial guy. And he's really big on like no debt and running a business debt free, or running your personal life debt free at least. And so we were following that tenet, and then trying to, I think, growing too slow, honestly, because we were really going the debt free route. And then all the work kept coming, and we needed a machine, a front end, we needed a skid steer loader really badly. And so we decided that we would take out a loan to buy a skid steer. And from there, we kind of realized, like, personally, we wanted to be debt free, and we would, with the exception of our house. But our business, we were fine with borrowing money for, if it made money, if the truck or the skid steer or whatever made money and had an ROI, I'm fine with it. But I wouldn't take out a loan to go on vacation, for example. Like, we're not going to do that. But so that became our hybrid philosophy of the Ramsey, kind of method. So that's the big overview of it, I guess.
Yep. And were you just operating the business out of your house?
Yeah, we were. As far as the office goes, yes, we had a shop that we were renting for a long time. It was just a big storage unit, and I've been there for a long, long time. And it was really cheap, but we didn't have electricity or water or anything there. It was just a big storage building, and but it was cheap, and so that was a great way to begin to claw our way back into like financial stability from being completely broke. I mean, in 2009. Man, I think I had $20 to my name. Like, that was it. We had nothing. And we clawed our way, over, 5 years, and now, 12 years later, whatever, 13, to where we've got a couple shekels to rub together. But it's definitely been I'd say the first 3 to 5 years are always the toughest in business, I think. Like, if you can make it that first 3 to 5, and if you're doing it half right, like the first 3 to 5, you can get through those. You're going to be okay. I think you'll make it.
Yeah. And like, I listened to, you've got the Kid Contractor Podcast, which you are the host of, which has been going about 12 months now. So I'm a big fan of. That's actually my favorite podcast. I'm not just saying that because you're on either, because I think it's you've got a good balance of information and entertainment in it as well. There's something I've heard from that, which I found fascinating, is your employee retention. So you've had one of your employees pretty much the whole time. Is that right? And a couple others for 10 years. So one for 20 years, a couple for 10. How do you retain that?
in my head, what I think is the reason is probably one thing, and then their reasoning is probably another. But ultimately, my right-hand man has been with me for 20 years. He was a buddy of mine prior, and then just the other two guys are just dudes that have come on through other employees that we've had. And so the meta picture is of like our philosophy on employees is like, I want it to be as close to self-employment for themselves as I can make it within reason, right? So, and when they need time off, they've got time off. If they need to get home early to their kids, they can. If they need to come in late because their kids are delayed or whatever, we try to be like, I try to be someone I would want to work for myself, right? And I'm probably easier on my guys than I am myself, frankly. But so I think that's a big thing, and just trying to have that good work-life balance. Like, we hardly work Saturday. We worked 2 Saturdays last year. That was it. And then we don't work a lot of Fridays. We try to put in our 40 hours a week, Monday through Thursday, and then maybe a half day Friday on overtime, or even just just enough time to get everybody up to their hours, or if they want some overtime, that's fine too. So we just try to be like a lifestyle business, and a lot of people would disagree with that, but at the same time, like, I've kept guys around for a long time like that, and I'm not retraining new people every single year. We pay pretty well. We have some decent benefits, nothing crazy, but paid time off, sick time, paid holidays, paid vacations, the basic stuff. We want to start adding investing and health insurance and that kind of stuff, but that's such an undertaking. It's really a big undertaking to take that on as a company, but we want to keep adding that stuff to be like a destination type company. So that's our philosophy.
Something I've heard a lot on, I don't know if the Canadians do it, but certainly in the US, you talk about the 401k. It sounds similar to what we have as superannuation. So whatever someone earns per week or however often they're paid, we have to pay 10% of that into their superannuation fund, and they can't access that until they retire at 65 or whatever it is at the time, the retirement age. Is that similar to what the 401k is?
That sounds something more like what we have here called Social Security. And so it's a fund you pay into, which we could argue if it's actually, the money's actually there or not, but that's a whole government and politics discussion. But people are still that have paid into it for years are still getting their Social Security checks, but that's a whole nother discussion. But that sounds more to me like the socialized program, if you will, of that we have here in the States of, you pay into, the employee pays a certain percentage, and then the employer pays a certain percentage into, in which they can then draw from at age 65. Then we do have the IRAs, the individual retirement accounts, the 401ks, all that stuff. And that's, and something my dad always tried to get me to do when I was young is you start that on your own, and you really should, because the Social Security is not that much money when you're retiring. It's enough to get by, but that's about it. You're not going to get to do the things really you want to do on that. And so a huge believer in personal responsibility and personal freedom. Like, you should be in doing your own investing. And maybe if it's not in the stock market or whatever, like, you need to be figuring out ways that you can put this money you're working so hard for into something, be it real estate or gold or silver or coffee beans, whatever it is you feel like is going to be worth more than what you paid for it down the road. Like, you need to be doing that. And so we're big believers in that. And I'm trying to get my guys to see the light in that stuff. And it's tough to get them on board with that stuff a lot of times. But us personally, we're really big believers in that. So long question, or long answer again to your short question of, is it like your superannuation? Is that what you folks call it? Yep. Interesting. So it's a similar program. And then IRAs and 401ks and stuff like that is additional, but it's more privatized.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm no financial professional. That's the best of my understanding.
Now I understand it more anyway. In terms of the work that you do you do all the designs yourself of the construction, or do you work for other designers as well?
We do. So we do a little bit of what we call bid build work, which is primarily on the hardscape construction end, which is the pavers, retaining walls, some concrete work, stuff like that. Where we work for a designer. Well, they'll send us a set of plans. We'll bid on it. They'll do a lot of the horticultural work, and we come in and do the hardscape work for them. We do that on the Auman Landscape end, which is our company. We do a lot of our own design build work. And most everything we do is pretty simple stuff. It's nothing as elaborate. I've seen you do, which is really fine gardening work and stuff like that, which is really awesome. And I wish we did more of that. And we're kind of beginning to lean that direction. We're working and partnering with a new designer. I'm an okay designer. I feel I'm a good designer. Graphically, I'm horrible. I'm a horrible graphic artist. I can't draw. That was my weakest thing in college. I understand good composition and stuff like that, I believe. But man, graphically, I can barely draw any good design graphics to save my life. So, and then mental competence with the computer and doing CAD and come up, I'm borderline. I don't know what I do well, honestly, when it comes to this industry other than build stuff. But I do understand good design and I do understand good ergonomics, and I have a pretty good handle on horticulture, I feel. But yeah, graphically, I'm no good. So when we need something really pretty and drawn up really excellent, we've got some guys that, will come up with some really nice looking stuff for us that I'll kind of give the big overview. Bad audio, my apologies. But for the audience listeners, I was showing Joel here a set of plans. We have a really nice set of rendering for a project. Hopefully we'll be doing this spring. But we work with a couple of people that will do designing for us. I want to bring on an in-house designer / salesperson for us here in the next 2 years. I was hoping to do it this year. I don't think financially we can swing that yet. But we do some bid build work, but primarily it's all design build, but on our end. But again, very simple stuff, nothing too elaborate in our demographic or niche of business, if you will.
Yeah, that's something that's a lot of businesses talk about that doing what you do well. So if what you do isn't quite as detailed, but you're making good money on it, then might as well just keep doing that. That's the goal for business.
Right. And so we have our niche of where we do a lot of, again, we're primarily a hardscape construction business. So building patios and retaining walls and stuff like that. And so, we put most of our projects are $10,000 to $50,000. And so generally this has been a big push too over the past year or so, year and a half. We're really going to begin pushing towards, again, more of the more complete projects like you do. And we really want to get into just higher end work, frankly, because we want to do that whole thing. We want to be on less job sites, but higher dollar job sites, if you know what I mean. So we want to have less clientele, but bigger projects. And so that's been a big push. Last year, we started cutting out a lot of small jobs, 1 day jobs, half day jobs, small stuff like that. We're just cutting that out because the logistics on both ends of that take up as much time as a week-long job to set up and to sell it and close on it and figure out the details. And so we're trying to reduce that office time, which is so consuming on my end, as you well know, to make it easier on us so we can really focus on and keep moving towards larger and larger projects.
And I saw recently that you're also you're advertising for a couple of positions. So I think there was a landscape foreman, but also you're looking for someone to start to do pools as well, someone to project manage those. So how's the feedback going from the ads that you've put out?
We have some feelers out there on a few of the hiring sites, as well as just some basic promotional things, looking for that. We found a decent candidate for another foreman position. So, and one thing too, we're looking for foreman position, and really what we're just trying to draw out is foreman quality guys. I'm fine with putting a whole crew together of foreman quality guys. That's going to cost us a fortune, but I don't want laborers so much anymore. I'm really looking for guys that know what they're doing, so we can assemble a team of really skilled guys, again, to help us push into this, the higher end market. And the guys we've all got working for us are all great in their own ways. They all have their great talents. And so, like I said, unless it's just a kid right out of school, high school or college, we're really looking for an experienced colleague to work with now. And so we had one guy, apply that seems promising. Another guy we're going to talk to and just see where he's at and what his potential is, let's say. On the pool end of things, I'd love to start a swimming pool installation division. Actually, I would love to. My wife is really pushing for this because there's so much demand in the States right now for swimming pools. It's out of control. Every contractor you talk to is booked up a year plus, or a buddy might start a pool division 2 years ago and was booked out his first year within a month. Like, it's just crazy. And
are they fiberglass pools?
Yeah, mostly shell pools. Yeah, fiberglass shells. I don't want to mess with liner pools. In Ohio, which is where we're at in the States, there's not a lot of gunite or concrete formed pools or anything like it. It's just not a thing in our area so much. So the shell pools seem to be, to me, the way to go with again, the demographic we're in and stuff like that. So they're really not hard to install. Everybody's really intimidated by them, but I just as soon as and that's my purpose for this is to hire someone with experience in that, because I don't have time to learn all the nuances of installing that. So if I can find that person that can be our lead guy that we're going to pay a ton of money and just handles that end of it, I can sell the work, I can manage it, whatever, but I need that person that already has that skill set. And if they're going to manage it, and we're going to pay them very, very well for that, with expectations of we get in 10 pools a year, we have to hit this certain thing to make it justify what we're willing to pay. But that's the way we're looking at that. And the same with a concrete or flat work, whatever you may call it in on the island there, whatever, and we want to, maybe start a concrete. There's just so much demand for work, so few people to do it. And I think the people that figure out how to mechanize and how to get the work done with as little labor that's available and as much equipment as possible, whoever figures out this labor situation is going to win big. And so we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, the use of machines in North America seems a lot more advanced than what we do in Australia. It seems like we're a lot more labor intensive and pushing barrows a lot more, whereas you guys use the motorized buggies a fair bit more. Because the ones I've seen here that we have they're only probably the size of a barrow and a half, so they're not that, they don't hold that much. But the ones you have seem quite large and make things a lot easier for your staff too.
You nailed it. As far as our philosophy goes on that is, even though those buggies, like you're saying, only haul, maybe double the amount of a wheelbarrow, it's the fatigue is what we're trying to beat of our crew. And now, granted, if you look at my biceps and you look at yours, dude, you're freaking ripped, man. And so, but I'm not in the field much anymore myself. And I miss it because I used to be in really good shape. Now I'm just skinny and frail. I'm working on getting built back up a little bit, but the idea is, like, with all the machinery we've invested in is to save that fatigue on our guys so that they can put in their full day and not be just totally gassed out and just dread the next day. I mean, that's just the thing. We like, oh, I don't want to push, that 40 yards of soil up that hill with a wheelbarrow tomorrow. Like, oh my gosh, like, it's going to be real easy to find an excuse not to come in tomorrow when they know that's what the next day is. So we got that little gas powered buggy that's going to do all that work for them. It makes it a little easier to come into a grueling job the next day. And that's our philosophy on it. And I'd encourage anybody to consider any way they can mechanize to do it, do the best you can to figure it out, because it will make your guys happier at their jobs. And, you won't maybe be in as good a shape, but you won't be dead at the end of the day either, I suppose.
That's it. It's a balance. Now, switching over to your podcast, one of the things I said before I like about it is the entertainment. And a few weeks ago, in one of the episodes, you did an impersonation of Ralph Wiggum and Christopher Walken in the same episode. So that's
I'm pure talent. Yeah.
So that was quite impressive. But where did I know that something else I wanted to talk about was the Hype House, which I think sounds like just the greatest thing in the world, and that's where you started the podcast last year, was it? So how did where did that all come about?
And you said the Hype House, correct?
Yeah.
So that's a thing that we put together, and big props to my wife Brittany and her friend Liz Fullerton. They pretty much made this thing happen. And it's from an idea we got from Paul Jameson with the Green Industry Podcast about, like, he was watching all these TikTok guys and gals rent houses out in California with all these content creators, and they would just like live in a house for a month. This was a couple years ago now, and just like do what they do on TikTok and just make all these crazy TikToks and all this stuff. And he's like, it's a really neat way to collaborate, blow your followings up, and produce content and produce good quality content. Well, you could argue what they were doing was quality or not, but like, so we're like, well, man, we should do like a green industry one of those. And I called Paul. Paul had pitched that a while ago, and I called Paul, and I don't think he was actually going to act on it and do it, but I'm like, hey man, I think it's a good idea. Let's do it. And he's like, well, let's do it then. So last year, just a bunch of I hate the phrase influencers, but we gathered a bunch of, green industry professionals that have social media followings, large and small. And just stayed at a house for a week in Tampa, Florida. And we just would go around and tour job sites, find guys out mowing grass with their mowing crews and just talk to them. And we just did whatever, and did, of course, tons of podcasts. And that's where mine started. I took my podcast board there that I wasn't expecting to ever start a podcast, and I ended up doing that. But yeah, the concept is like to get together in the wintertime, which it's winter in the States here, and try to produce a lot of content for the green industry for all our followings, and just collaborate and grow each other's pages. But again, ultimately, like produce content. And it was a lot of fun. And we're doing it in a couple weeks again in Tampa, Florida, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of us in the southern states of Australia going up to Queensland in the winter. So it's okay. Yeah, everyone's pretty much would be keen to do that, let alone actually doing work there as well.
Well, you should head one up, man, and get a big collab event going.
Yeah, there's so many more people in the US that do podcasts. There's not in your industry, so there's not a lot that I've noticed down here. So in Victoria, there's like our industry association, Landscape Victoria. They do a landscaping one that comes out once a fortnight. There's I know that there's the guy who your producer. There's a guy in Sydney who he looks after as well, who's a lawnmower. I can't remember his name. Might be Aussie Lawn Stars. Yeah,
I was going to say that's what I was afraid to mess it up, but I think you're right. It's Aussie Lawn Stars. That's what I thought. So yeah, it's cool.
I've heard of him, but yeah, there's not like because I don't listen to other lawn maintenance ones, so I don't know any that exist. But yeah, there's not a lot that exists in Australia. So it'd be good to hear more people start to do one, and then we can start that too. Go up to Queensland.
There you go, man. It'll be a big hit. Yeah, right. It'll be a lot of fun. Who wouldn't want to do that, right? So
that's it. So what's the best thing you found from starting your podcast?
Man, I tell you, the best thing about it is just like with social media, you get to meet and talk to so many cool people, and people with great ideas and better ideas than myself. And just like, so the connections, the collaboration, and honestly, this is the kind of the Mahatma Gandhi altruistic thing of like the feedback you get from a podcast that actually helps someone in a dark spot or in a bad place, or like take their company to a new place, or like I share a lot of I share all my screw ups. Like I have nothing to hide. I don't cover anything up. Like I've been such an idiot running a company for so long. Like I tell people about it, and the feedback I'll get on that, like, hey man, dude, I've got a couple years worth of tax mess on my hand too. And like, I don't want what happened to you to happen to me, and I'm going to go straighten that up. And it's like, that right there is, we don't make any money doing a podcast. It's not about the money, but like, dude, I know this is where the ego gets set in there, but it's like, dude, we saved someone from going down the road I went. Like, holy cow, like what an honor, right? Like, and so that's kind of the altruistic thing about it. But Mother Teresa, of podcasting here, but that's the reward. That's the payoff, because financially it's not there. So fortunately, like, you're actually helping people. It's the greatest thing, man. It's really, really, really cool.
Yeah, on this, my answer would have been the same, because I didn't think of that before starting it. Like, I just wanted to talk to people about landscaping. That was the least weird way to do it, right? Rather than just saying, do you want to catch up and talk about landscaping? Well, this is about it. I can just ask whatever questions I want. But yeah, I started getting messages from people saying how much they love it, and all the advice they're getting from it, and all like new landscapers and more experienced ones. So the full range of people. Have you had many people knock you back from when you asked them to come
on? As far as like, refuse or not refuse, but not want to be on the show or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the biggest thing is like, we're trying to have on constantly professionals, right? And professionals are busy. And that's the biggest challenge, is aligning everyone's that's professional and like doing big things is who we want to talk to, getting their schedule to line up with, my schedule. And I do what I can to flatten my schedule to meet theirs. It's tough. And as you know, I'm sure too, like that's the biggest thing. Most folks are willing to be on and do it. It's just finding the time to do it that's the most challenging thing. So where I'm really always flattered anytime someone takes their precious personal time to be on the show, it's like that's an honor, man. And I try to treat that with as much reverence as I can. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Otherwise, once in a while, some folks that I want to be on are reluctant to be on because they don't know they don't realize, and everyone has something to share that could help someone, right? Like we're not alone on this. Like a podcast I have titled, You Are Not Alone. It was a guy that was an asphalt paving contractor. And he paved roads and parking lots and stuff with asphalt. He's like, what could I say that was, dude, it was one of our best episodes. And it's like, people have so much they can share if they've been in business for about any length of time. And especially if you can ask the questions or pry just a little bit to get out of them what, they can talk about. Like, that's where everybody has something to share. Just how well they can share, it's another thing. So that's the only pushback I get is when people think like, what in the world can I talk to you about that would be of any help to anyone? It's like, you'd be surprised, So
yeah, they can be the best guests to have on because they're and they're not too arrogant about how good they are.
Yeah,
they're just down to earth.
100%. Yeah, they're not an egomaniac like me. That's a very good point. So
now you said there that you title your episodes of the podcast, and you also got a YouTube channel with what some people have said is one of the greatest YouTube videos of all time, titled Gas in the Eye.
I swear I'm going to make this video the biggest video of all time. So yeah, I titled, I don't know if Brian Fullerton put you up to this, I swear to goodness. So I caught a lot of flack for this because I thought it was funny, but this is my mindset and my mentality. Yeah, we have a YouTube channel, Auman Landscape, Auman Landscape. But I got gasoline in my eye at our shop one day, and I'm really big on safety and trying to have as best of safety gear and equipment and stuff as we can afford at the time. And I got gasoline in my eye from a tank that was under pressure, and man, it just went right in my eye. And I was washing my eye out, and again, being the narcissist that I am, I grabbed goat. I was like, man, this is a great case in point right here. Why we have eye wash at the shop. So why my eye is on fire, figuratively, not literally. My eye's burning with this gasoline, and it's 2-cycle too. So it's oil and gas and just whatever. And I'm dumping this dumping this saline water in my eye and trying to rinse my eye out. I'm videoing myself doing it. It's like, this is why we have this stuff on hand, is like, you never know what's going to happen. And when you least think it's going to happen is when it's going to get you, I think, in most cases. So long story short, we made that YouTube video. I could make it all clickbaity of, I got gasoline in my eye, and, make it all the big clickbait junk. And I just thought it would be funny to title it Gas in Thy Eye. And then, so like all my YouTuber buddies who have really successful channels and big subs and subscription counts and lots of views, gave me so much crap. They're like, dude, you had gold there and you totally ruined it with like a biblical sounding title. And I like, sometimes I'm just like against the grain like that anyway. So, but the point is the point was like, dude, have the safety gear on site. That's on site in your trucks, or your tippers, like you say, whatever. Have that stuff around, and that's the overarching thing. I want to make it, but then folks give me so much crap about the title. I'm like, dude, I'm going to make this the biggest video ever somehow. It's not going very well, but again, the title's not big.
It is a good video though, because I had something similar to one of my guys. Like he got a bit of steel in his eye. He had safety glasses on, but it bounced off his cheek and up into his eye. We didn't have anything like that, but there was another guy. I think it was a plumber or an electrician on site as well, and he had an eye wash in his van. So he gave us that, and we got that out. So that was something I thought we need to have that. As well.
So now In Style Gardens has eye wash bottles on their trucks, I imagine.
Yep, correct.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sucks. It takes an incident like that, and we've got our own stories like that too. No judgment here. We've got our own incidents where it's like, yeah, we should have had a fire extinguisher, or you name the instance, and it's like, yeah, we should have. So now we have. Although we never had the eye wash is the big thing that taught us a lesson. But we have fire extinguisher. I just spent one day, I was like, you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to spend a couple $1,000 and buy the stuff we should have. And so we bought fire extinguishers for everything, tourniquets. Everybody should have a combat application tourniquet, I believe. And that's you just never know what you're going to come across in this industry. A lot of us are on the road so much, you may come across a car accident. We're all working on job sites, which, that plumber, like you said, thank goodness they had that stuff. Like you never know what, and from their perspective, they're the ones that came across you, and they're the first responders in that case. Right. So like, I'm a big believer in that. Like, you individually are the first responder ultimately. And so like we should have as much understanding and training in that stuff as we possibly can. And, be it CPR or knowing how to do the Heimlich maneuver, just some basic stuff. Like you literally with these simple things could save someone's life. And I know people that have, and it's just like, so I dork out on that pretty bad. I'm that freaking dorky guy, like worried about safety all the time. But it's like, and you understand too, Joel, like when you have guys working for you or gals, like, dude, the thought of those guys getting actually hurt on my jobs is the worst thought in the world. And I pray every day that our crew has a safe day, a safe week. I'm a Christian man. I believe in Jesus, and dude, I pray every day. It's just the worst thought of like that. And I tell my guys this all the time. Like no one here makes enough money to make it worth taking a risk on something. Like there's just this industry, this job. And it almost sounds self-deprecating, but it's like, we're not saving the world with what we're doing. So there's nothing here that's worth taking a chance with your fingers, your arm, your life, your kids, your family. They're counting on you to come home today. So don't do something stupid with a loader or a backhoe, whatever. Like, it's worth it to take a little longer to do it safe. And we have a pretty good accident history, fortunately. But I mean, we had a guy one time, and Joel cut me off whenever, but like the craziest thing was this guy was working for us for a little bit of time. He had done 2 combat tours in Iraq back in the 2000s. And he made it through that. And then he was working for us. And like a month later, almost cuts his thumb off with a knife cut and a piece of rope. And I'm like, what the heck? And caused us a worker's injury claim and all this. And it's just like, and what he was doing was not a smart way to cut a rope with a knife. And so it's like, but otherwise we have pretty minor things, but we're really always trying to be as safe as we can. Long story, Joel, sorry.
So you're saying working for you is more dangerous than being in Iraq?
That was actually the joke we made around the company. It's like, man, Iraq must not have been a big deal, but working in Auman must be pretty tough, right? So that was a joke for a little while around the crew there.
So you're obviously keen on training and education, and you've also got the Hardscape Academy, which is like is it an online course that you run teaching people?
It's an online training platform that we have. And thanks for bringing it up. I didn't ask you to do it, so I appreciate you bringing it up, and we don't need to dwell on it too much, but because I don't want this to sound all salesy or anything. But we have an online training academy called the Hardscape Academy. And in the States, hardscape construction is a really big thing, and so we use a lot of pavers and build a lot of retaining walls out of segmental block. And so we have online training courses for that we sell, and trying to make it really accessible and understandable to the first timer or whatever. And so that's a big thing we're real big on. And then in the States, we're in the process of building a shop that we own, and we're gonna have an in-person training academy there too, which is gonna be really cool that we're gonna do. So and it's funny when we were talking, because you were so gracious to have me on your show, you were so gracious to be a guest on my show. I mean, it was funny. You're saying, paver work is not like as prestigious to have as it is here in the States. It's such an interesting dynamic. I was really shocked by that, honestly. And you folks do a lot more mortar masonry work, a lot more natural stone work. It just was a really interesting thing to see how differently it's done. So that was really cool. And again, that's what's so cool about podcasting, right? Like, dude, we learned about each other, and you already guess kind of knew, but like I learned about that, through you, and what's big in Australia and what versus the States. So that's a cool thing about podcasting too. Is like I learned so much, and I get to talk to cool people like you, man. So
yeah, and the paving companies in the States seem to be a lot bigger a deal as well. They're not like, there's probably 1 or 2 that I can think of here that they splash out on social media and try and make a big deal about themselves. But there seems to be a lot more in the US that I know of than in Australia, I reckon, because a lot of the ones in Australia are just importers, so they don't actually make anything. Whereas your guys seem to make them, because a lot of the concrete products.
Yeah, it's a lot of the pavers we use here in the States are compressed high strength concrete, and with a lot of decorative finishes and surfaces on them, and installed properly on the proper base and bedding material, they can hold up as well as anything else. But the industry has grown a lot over 20 years, and we've learned a lot about the proper compaction methods needed so that they hold up properly over the long term. And I mean, there's contractors out there not doing it so well. I think as a whole, the industry is growing to where a lot more installations in 20 years are going to look still really good. But a lot of installations from 20 years ago now don't look that good. But the industry was really young then, and still trying to figure out how to really lay these things properly so that, and education as a whole, in that industry is not, that's the one problem with it, is just anybody can go out and grab a wheelbarrow and a truck and say they're a paving, a brick paver contractor, right? And without a lot of experience. And so, it really falls on the homeowner or the customer or the client to hire a reputable contractor that really knows hardscape construction and make sure they're getting a project that's going to be installed well over the years. And there's a lot of great contractors out there. There's a lot that aren't so great. And a lot of them are just young and learning, whatever. And a lot of them have been doing it too long and not adapted to new methodology and stuff. So, that's just the state of contracting, I think. But the industry is really good right now, really strong. And the investment in outdoor living spaces, like you have seen, like you said, in Australia, especially the past couple of years. I've been in this long enough to see, even after, in the States, it was a big deal, of course, obviously, but, 9/11, 2001, we saw the same thing. A lot of people slow down their traveling after the terrorist attacks in the United States. Like, we saw a lot of traveling get cut, and people invest heavily in their outdoor living spaces at home. And the industry has not slowed down ever since. And now with the COVID thing going nuts or whatever, we've seen, again, a whole new resurgence in home remodeling, home landscape construction, like you were talking about on my show, and it's been big in Australia again as well. So, I don't know where the top is with this industry, honestly.
No, yeah, it's the same here. Is like you were saying, if you wanted to get a fiberglass pool in Geelong, certainly you can't get one this year, and the year's only just started.
It's crazy.
You got to wait at least 12 months to get a pool, and that's nothing to do with delays on materials or anything. It's just there's that many people wanting them done, they can't make them fast enough and install them fast enough.
Yeah, and that's something. And so there's great opportunity there if you can get the physical product. And you could probably charge a premium for there's not, a lot of people will be willing to wait for a better price, but there's a lot of people who don't, and you can really charge a premium if you learn it. But that's the thing, you got to learn it. There's a lot of nuances to everything. There's an art to everything, right? And you can't just jump in it and crush it. Like, there's nuances you got to learn. And that's why I want that right-hand man in that division, so they can hold our hand through that. And so we don't have to learn the hard way the first year. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
we can't hurt our reputation the first year in something just because we're learning the way to do it. It's just, we're too established of a contractor for that. So, but I'd encourage anybody, anything like that. Like when you hear other contractors are booked out super long, and that's like across their industry, it might be time to pivot and look at that and be that contractor and kind of jump in and pick up some of that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume it's not the same in the States, but you actually need a building license to do pool installs. Yeah, so you can't. Not anyone can do them. So you have to get the permits to do it, and you can't get a permit unless you got a license for pool building. Mine is for structural landscaping, so that doesn't include pool building. So I have to add that onto the repertoire.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and in the States, there is a building code that we would have to conform to. There is some minor thresholds, if you will, or hurdles that to install them, but nothing like a license like you're talking. That construction industry in the States is very loose, let's say, or loosely regulated. Now, for plumbing and doing gas lines and stuff like that, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. There's some other trades that you have to get some licensing for, and pesticide application in the States, you do have to get licensing for and be a licensed applicator for that kind of stuff. But in the landscape construction, not a lot of requirements there to consider yourself a contractor. Now, each state and locality, you might have to be a licensed or registered contractor with them, in a city, let's say, of Chicago or New York. But ultimately, as a licensing, it varies state to state, but in general, like California and New York have some crazy contractor license rules. But you get through the Midwest and the southern states, not much at all. So
yeah. Now going back to the shop that you're building, that's it's been exciting to watch along with you as well, because it's something you were talking about a while ago, and now it's starting to come to fruition. So what sort of timeline is on that when you're hoping to have it all done?
Oh man. Our builder, our pole barn we're building a fairly large shop. We bought 3 acres, commercially zoned. We're building a 70 foot by 120 foot building. So it's pretty good sized building, 20 feet ceilings, pretty good sized building. Our contractor, we're going to have put the shell of the building up. So the posts, all the framing, and the roof and all the metal and all that stuff is very behind and understaffed. So it's a contractor I've known for a long time. He is going to, as of right now, help us get the posts in the ground and set the trusses because it's a 70 foot span. That's pretty serious. I know we could build it. I know my team and I could build it. We're going to be too slow at it. So he's going to come in, at least get that part for us, get those things up. And then we're going to put all the purlins and girts and all the other stuff and frame out the offices, pour the concrete, all this crazy stuff. All that to answer this question of our goal is to be in this thing by the fall this year, 2022. I don't know, man, because we plan on hiring out a lot more services to get us ahead of this faster. I don't know, man, but the goal is to be hopefully operating out of it midsummer, and then from there, hopefully really wrap it up by the fall. Because we want to have a big party and invite everybody from the internet there in the fall. So hop on a plane and come on over, man.
Oh, well, yeah, it sounds good. They'll probably wouldn't be able to get back into the country though, so they're not too keen on letting people back in. But it does sound like it'd be a good time. So yeah, that was something else I was going to ask about in terms of the Hype House and the one you just had with LCR Media. Have you developed good relationships with other contractors and podcasters from doing meetups like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The green industry in general is such a wonderful community to be part of. It has its drama and its knotheads and knuckleheads, whatever you want to call them, like the guys that are just short-sighted and cause problems and talk too much. There's those in every industry, right? So I'm not going to say we're exempt from that stuff, but overall, like the green industry social media community is really strong, and I've gotten to know a ton of great guys. And business is business, and those kind of relationships, it's all about your ability to communicate and interact and have good relationships with all those guys. And I'm really privileged to know a lot of those folks. And like yourself, like I've got global connections now, right? Like this is really cool. And so, in the States and Canada, I don't think I know anybody in Mexico or South America, but dude, it's just it's a great community. And I'd recommend anybody listening, just reach out, shoot a DM, and you might be surprised, like what kind of relationship you strike up. If it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and both people are capable of like communicating well, like you'd be surprised what connections you can create that are going to be great for both parties, and network and team up on collaborative events and stuff like that. Like I definitely recommend like just DMing anybody and be like, hey, what can we do? What can we do together or help or whatever? Like it's a great thing in the social media community. It's really awesome.
Yeah. I've had people I've just started messaging on Instagram, and I've messaged for a couple of years, and then you end up, so you haven't met them before, but then you end up, working on a project together or done other stuff. Yeah, I think it's been awesome. And it's the same with podcasting. It's the same kind of industry.
Do you get the same thing when you talk to someone? Like, I feel like if I ever get the honor and privilege of meeting you in person, it really feels seamless. Like when I meet guys I've talked to for 4 years on the internet, and then I meet them in person, it's just like, hey, what's up? And we're like pals, like right off the bat. I'm going snowmobiling next week in Montana with literally some guys I met on the internet. Like when can you imagine 10 years ago, 20 years ago saying like, I'm going to go snowmobiling out in a remote place with some dudes I met on the internet, and I've met them in person in the meantime, but like, it's so crazy. We never would have expected that, and to build these relationships and networking relationships like that. And so, yeah, man, it's just so cool. And I love when I meet somebody in person. It just feels like we didn't miss a beat, it's so cool.
Yep. It's something I'm fascinated about, because I listened to, back when I was saying, has anyone knocked you back? I asked Mike Pletz to come on the podcast at the same time I asked you. How's this for a flex? He's read the Instagram message, so he's obviously clicked accept, and then just didn't reply. So he didn't even say no. But something I've heard on his podcast, which is the How to Hardscape podcast, which is what I like. He was asking people what their best piece of equipment is. A lot of people mentioned a zip level, and I don't know that I've never seen one used in Australia before. I assume they exist, but can you explain what a zip level is to me? Because we use laser levels, like rotary laser levels.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I almost missed your question because I was writing. I know Mike, and so, and this is the power of social media, right? I'm gonna shoot Mike a message like, "Hey, respond to Joel's DM, you jerk. He's a good guy. Take care of him." So I'll make him respond to you. So, but he's a busy guy. But yeah, I will make sure he gets back in touch with you, or of the best ability I have, anyway. So there you go. That's all about that.
Talking about when you were saying it's hard to coordinate everyone's timelines. He has those big podcasts where he's got like 8 or 9 guys on at one time. That's some big heavy hitters too. So I don't know how he does that.
Yeah, it's I've been on a couple of those and it's a lot of fun, but he'll just host like a big Zoom meeting like this with a bunch of guys on. And again, the hardscape community, the lawn care community, all that there's some really tight, I say tight, but it's open to anybody, but like there's some great groups of guys that'll get together and shoot the breeze and talk contracting. And then like I said, Mike makes that happen, which is really cool. It's a great networking opportunity. It's really cool stuff. So I'll shoot Mike a message. I'll make sure for what little stroke I've got, I'll tell him, hey, answer Joel, for goodness sake. The zip level, it's that's the brand name, but it's a high precision altimeter is what what its technical name is, if you want to go brand neutral. I guess high precision altimeter is really the best way to describe it. But I don't know, man. So laser levels are awesome and they have their place, and I use them a lot, and I use the zip level thing a lot. I don't like doing free advertising for zip, but these high precision altimeters, but it's a digital water level, for lack of a better way to describe it. Right. And, they're really handy for estimates. I'll take that just a little suitcase size thing, not even that big. Right. And it's just really handy for capturing measurements on a property you go to for the first time, just to put a rough estimate together of like, okay, there's 10 feet of fall from the front doorstep to the driveway to the front curb. And, it's just a super handy tool. So is that answering your question there?
Yeah.
Joel, I don't know, I guess.
Yeah, one of the benefits I've seen of it, I've seen some people using it like in videos, and you can go around corners, that sort of thing, where the line of sight of the laser level is going to get.
Yep.
But
it has a lot of features. There's so much on it. There's a lot. That thing does a lot that I don't even understand how to use it. Like, I know there's one function called hold. And so you hit the hold button and you can drop that little unit down a well or over a cliff. And once it stops moving and sets still, it'll capture that measurement. And then you pull it up and it'll tell you it was however many feet from your benchmark you set. Like, there's all sorts of cool stuff that thing does. There's all sorts, and that's about the most advanced level of it I use, aside from just capturing grades on. But you can upload them into all sorts of different software to create grade plans and stuff like that. But it's a really great tool for an estimate. Just on an estimate, like you said, line of sight's a great thing for it too, because you don't have to have that laser field running everywhere. But like I said, laser levels have their place. We use them a lot, especially if you can do a slope and all that stuff with setting grade drain lines and all that. So I think it's a tool you should have in your arsenal for sure.
Yeah. And in something else I've seen a lot of is people doing snow removal, and everything I've seen just looks like the worst industry to be a part of in terms of how hard they work. But I've seen you don't do it. Is that something you've done before?
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I'll be fair, is like, I know guys that bass fish all summer long waiting for the snow to fall. They live for plowing snow. They live for clearing snow. They absolutely love it and dream of it. And as soon as it turns, I'd say 0, for you folks, or 32 degrees here in the States, they got trucks turned on idling, waiting to go. And they're like, just excited. Other guys treat it as a necessary evil. They feel they have to do it to survive through the winters. We choose, I tell you what, man, there's guys that you can make some great money doing it. You can break even doing it. You can think you're making great money doing it, and you end up all you're doing is destroying your trucks with all the salt, destroying your machines with all the salt. burning your guys out with the horrible hours, because you'll go 20, 30 hours straight plowing or clearing snow or salting or whatever. So I'm a little biased against it personally, but I mean, I know guys that live for it, love it. I know guys make a ton of money doing it. I know guys that think they make a lot of money doing it and probably really aren't. And I know guys that just aren't making a lot of money and they hate it and they can't wait to get out of it. So I've done it before, but one of the big problems I had with it is I always was just dipping my toe in, as opposed to really getting into it and buying the stuff I needed, the machines and the trucks and all the stuff to get into it fully. I think it's something you don't really kind of play with. You either get into it and do it, or you don't touch it, because otherwise it's just, you're kind of half in the water, half out of it. And it just, I think it's not a great way to do it when you're doing it for hire, so to each his own is all I can say in that. And some guys dream of it and some guys want out of it something terrible. So it's one of those kind of things, I think.
Yeah. It sounds like anything. If you're going to commit to something, same like with pool building, you got to fully commit to it. Otherwise, you can't be half pregnant. So something I was going to talk to you about was the Together in the Trades. I don't know if you call it a seminar that you and Brittany and a couple others do. So tell me about that. Yeah.
So that's something that was, I almost forget its origin story at the moment, but yeah, we co-host that with Brian and Liz Fullerton and my wife and I, and again, I can't hear, actually, again, my wife, Brittany, she handles actually pretty much all of the Together in the Trades thing. I'm there, I talk at it, whatever, that's my thing, I guess. But the Together in the Trades thing is something we realized, and actually one of Brian Fullerton, he has a thing called Entrepreneur Academy. And he would do a live event every year. And we started noticing more and more wives and girlfriends coming to the event. And we're like, man, I wonder, maybe we should do something that focuses on, the relationship involved in contracting and running a business, whatever. We don't care if you got a pizza shop or a bridge construction company or a lawn maintenance business, whatever it is, like the trials and tribulations of running a company. Even if you don't run it together, you run the company together. Because the stress from the business comes home, and that your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, is going to have to deal with that. And so we decided to hold a conference, I guess, that had professional speakers, professional marriage counselors, authors, all that stuff. People have written books and understand that world of, how to make a better marriage or relationship. And we hosted our first one in Waco, Texas last year. It was a great success. We're really excited for it. We've got one coming up in June in Nashville, Tennessee this year. But the focus is, we call it a summit for couples in business. And my tongue-in-cheek joke is it's geared at helping you not get divorced because of your company. And because it's tough. And everybody thinks they're alone in their struggles with running a business, right? And the strain it puts on marriage and relationships. And so our goal with that is to try to make people feel, and it's not a be all end all. You come to this, it's not going to save your marriage or save your company. It's a tool in your basket. It's a weapon in your arsenal to help strengthen a marriage or a relationship. We don't want anybody coming to this thing that's going to save their relationship. It's part of what you've got to do, of the long-term work it takes over the 12 months of the year, the crazy freaking year, to keep your marriage or your relationship intact. And the stuff we talk about there is hopefully going to help people remember, man, I am disgruntled at my spouse at the moment, and I need to talk about this, and not, I'm mad she didn't, get taxes done or whatever. You pick the scenario, or have dinner ready or some craziness, whatever it is. And we need to talk, because I've been busting my tail and working late and all that stuff. And the spouse is mad maybe that the husband isn't carrying his weight around the house and keeping things up and stuff like that. It's because he's been working late, or vice versa, whatever the scenario is, whatever the setup you have is, the business puts stress on a relationship. And so we think we could do something here that would help people with that. And ultimately that's the goal of Together in the Trades, a summit for couples in business. Try not to get divorced because your company, that's the thing we started. And so we're looking forward to it. We got a lot of great feedback, and it's neat to see the couples come together. And one of the things that was really cool at that last year was the first time we ever put it on. And I'll tell you, any conference you go to, it's really neat watching a speaker when they're talking and they say something, he or she says something, the speaker, and heads go down to make notes. That is a powerful moment to witness that. Even if the few times I've done speaking, I've said something that apparently is worthwhile, and you see someone's head go down to take a note, like it's either this guy's an idiot or this guy said something that's meaningful. Like, it is the most flattering thing. And to see when you put a conference together of spouses and couples and relationships trying to figure out and navigate this crazy world of running a business together, and you see them actually taking notes at this thing, like, oh my gosh, we're making a difference in people's lives. Like, this is cool. Now go apply it and be diligent and repeat that, right? Because it's just like, that's the thing with my wife and I. Like, we kind of joke, we get in these phases of like, hey, we're pretty much like roommates, you know, running a company together. And it's like, when we feel like that, it's time to like put the brakes on the company a little bit, and we need to go out on regular date nights. And that's something we've been big on, like, here lately. We've said it for a long time. We finally really got an institute. We have a night a week that we get a sitter for the kids, and we are going to go out together and just have one-on-one time. And we may only talk about the damn company the whole time, but that's our relationship. But like, it's things like that of like, it's going to help us keep sane and stay together, you know, with each other. And it's just you invest in your company, you hopefully invest in yourself personally, and you have to invest in your relationship. And it's just like, I can't tell you how many businesses I've known that have wrecked relationships, be it with your parents or their siblings or their kids, and, you know, marriages. And I hate seeing a business drive people apart, because it just shouldn't be that way. Right. And so that's like our Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, altruistic, shining light on the hill goal with this thing, called Together in the Trades. Thanks for letting me ramble on that a little more too. Geez.
No, I think you should be applauded for it, because it's like, everyone might run a seminar for whatever they're trying to sell, or like a product, and get other people into it trying to sell their products. But I can't see any way that anyone's making a profit out of that. You're just doing it to help people. So I think it's awesome that you do that.
Yeah, you want to talk about something that doesn't make money? Yeah, host a marriage conference. That's worse than contracting. So, yeah, that right now is strictly, that is just something, you know, I'll tell you, it's just something we enjoy doing because we're psychopaths, I think, mostly. And I say, you know, Brittany, my wife, again, I'm here for an opinion now and then on it, but she, again, makes all the things happen. Her and Liz really are the stars of the thing, because they're just logisticians when it comes down to it. They love to plan and organize things, and Brian and I are kind of around, I guess, whatever, but like, those girls make it happen. And yeah, that's something we enjoy doing at the moment. And until we're filling stadiums or something, yeah, I don't see it being a very profitable venture, but we enjoy it, and it's cool to see and help young contractors and young couples hopefully begin to figure it out, hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time out today to come on. Really, really appreciate you coming on. I've got no doubt there's going to be a massive amount of value that people will get from this episode. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for doing your own podcast too, because it's something I love listening to, and pushing out 3 episodes a week is something that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, crazy is the right word for sure. It is crazy. I'm a crazy person for doing it, because that comes at the expense of something, and sometimes the company suffers for it, or personal life, whatever. So thank you for your time today. Thanks for letting me get on here and ramble and babble for a while. And thanks for being flexible in your schedule, dealing with my crazy schedule, all that. Joel, you're a class act, man.
Thanks, mate.